George Dieter, welcome to Business
Good morning,
Insider.
Mark. How are you?
I'm well, but as soon as I start feeling uncomfortable because you're psychoanalyzing, I'll put my hand up or something. Psychologist, author, specialist in juvenile issues and development.
Yeah, juvenile delinquency or the issues that contribute to juvenile delinquency.
Yeah. And up until 4 years ago, that was your pretty much your life.
That's correct. I worked for more than 10 years in the juvenile justice system, and then also part-time I started my private practice, which was sanctioned by the authorities. And then in 2006 I left the public sector and just focused on my private practice. And it was 2 years later, or at the end of 2007, that I started to talk to a fellow psychologist, Ian Kilpatrick, and we floated the idea of starting a practice together.
And that was Axiom.
Was then Axiom, and we started in 2008 in January. The transition was a bit daunting for me because I was quite comfortable in my little practice. It was cozy, and
we usually are, aren't we?
Well, you realise how attached you are to your particular cup and mug, or your
your time too.
And I could. I was writing a book at the time, and so I felt like the proverbial little pig. I could write, and I would see a client, and then I could write a bit more and have a cup of coffee. So it was great. And when the idea was floated to become a bit bigger, I had some reservation because I couldn't see the benefit really, and it took some time. When I started to look at, and Ian had lined up some locations, and when I saw the space, I realized that with space you can do a lot more things, and that then became really the motivator to...
Was that the main benefit that you saw?
Well, there were two benefits. One is, as a sole operator, especially in this line of business, you realize that there are no holidays. Because if you go on a holiday...
I need to tell you, in any line of business where you are the business there, unless you've got a very understanding partner who would let you go to the Philippines, for instance, for a skin diving holiday in August, and this question is going on way too long, but Bob knows the point of this. But you lose time, don't you?
Well,
or you gain time as well.
It's not so much the losing time. I mean, if you can afford that, then you go. But you have to start again when you come back, because your clients, of course, are not going to say, "Look, my crisis can wait till you come back." And so it really means that you can take maybe a week off or 10 days, taking the weekends into account. And so that was one consideration. The other one was certainly the space, that with a bigger practice you can do more things. And also and that were all thoughts that came in while we were talking about this, that you get invigorated by somebody else's energy, by their ideas. You realize there's things to learn from each other. And that is certainly something that has attracted our associates as well. We're now 8 in the practice, and one of the attractions, of course, is that you have a professional learning process going on.
Is that formalised? Do you formalise that?
We meet at least once a month as a practice, and then we discuss administrative issues that the associates might have about the booking times or locations, whatever. And then we have our professional development, as we call it, where we present a case or discuss a case where we're stuck or where we maybe had a success, which is very important, and say, well, this is what worked. This is what got me out of stuckness, and so that others can benefit from your experience. And we, as part of the growing, we made sure that new psychologists that come in have different skill sets, different interests, areas of interest.
It's very well structured. You've thought this through.
Well, that was one of the benefits, really, to say, well, I don't know it all. I can deal with most of the situations that arise, but obviously, as you know, the more you know about a particular subject, the further you can advance the client, or you can open more avenues for them, give them different perspectives. It's just a mechanic or a specialised diesel mechanic.
Yeah, indeed. So looking forward, that's been the last 4 years. You talked about growth a little earlier. What does the next 2 years look like?
Well, the next 2 years probably there's a big issue within psychology, or within the next generation of psychologists, and that is the fact that we now want to move into a new model. So instead of studying 4 years, then having 2 years of internship, there's a big push towards a 5+1, so that you study 5 years and then you get your supervision in 1 year, and while you actually study. The problem is that there is no provisions for that. There's only 2 universities who offer that pathway, but there's way too many psychologists wanting to go down that pathway. So in other words, officially there is still the opportunity to study 4 years and then do your 2 years supervised practice, but in reality you have to be registered to see clients. And I don't know if this is a bad joke, or if this is actually very
this is a very Australian joke, I think.
Yeah, it's because officially they say yes, of course you can become a intern psychologist, except you're not allowed to see clients. But to be able to become intern psychologist, you have to see clients, right? But because for Medicare you have to be registered and 3 years practice. For work cover you have to be registered and have 3 or 5 years practice behind you. So in other words, unless you have clients who pay the full fee, who don't get any assistance, unless you have a pool of clients, there's basically, you can't employ an intern psychologist. Indeed. And so we've done a little bit of lateral thinking, and we're going to talk to probably the university here in Ourimbah and see if we can get a program going, so that would enable us to, in setting up, for example, an anxiety clinic where people pay less fee but are prepared to be seen by an intern psychologist, supervised by a psychologist, and this way help people who are financially not able to afford interventions, because as you may be aware of, the government just cut down the sessions from 12 to 10. It was originally from 18 to 10, and now they introduced the 6 additional sessions again until the end of the year, and after that we might be limited to 10 sessions where you get government assistance.
And unfortunately, most of your clients wouldn't go in saying, okay, I'm going to 10 sessions and I'm going to work really hard on those.
Well, and sometimes it's not a matter of just working really hard. Sometimes it just takes a bit longer than 10 sessions. And if you don't have the funds, then what are you going to do?
So talk about those relationships. The university is fantastic, and I would think keen to embrace, hopefully.
Well, we'll wait and see what happens. Another area would be the high schools and offering services to students, especially during the stressful times of the HSC. A lot of the younger clients that I see suffer from anxiety. And then, of course, anxiety and depression they almost go hand in hand in a way. Why? Because of school stress, or trying to do well at school, not falling behind. Some issues around bullying and so forth. So we've got a couple of psychologists who are child psychologists or adolescent psychologists.
I was going to talk about that. So you have a full spectrum of resources, so it's adult through to children.
Adult through to children. I mean, we all more or less see adolescents up to old age, or what do you call old age? But mature-aged clients.
Mature, I think. Yeah.
And then some are specialising in children, sort of from the age of 5 to 12 or 14. And others focus on school issues in that period of time.
With the cutback of hours or appointment from 18 to basically 10 now, then they depend on private funding at that point.
That's correct, and that's basically what it means is that the 10 sessions that you get now through Medicare is you get $83 or something back, and then depending on what the practices charge, which is usually around $120, $130 an hour, you're up for the difference, which is between $40 and $50.
Seems extraordinary that you get so little, and you are a primary caregiver.
I always find it interesting when I'm asked to do a court report, and the solicitors tell the client, just go and tell them to write a brief report, and the clients say, well, what do you charge for that? And the solicitors charge, per 5 minutes. But when they send clients over, it's just go and let them write a brief letter.
There's some contradictions. I don't think we've got time to tackle those. As a region, do you see? Well, I guess from a business perspective, is your client base growing? And
It is. There's, like in any business, I guess there's seasonal ups and downs, but we only have 4 years to compare to each other. But unfortunately, there doesn't seem to be a trend. When we thought, we know the trend now, then the next year throws up a different picture. So, it's a bit difficult, I guess, because of the changes that came in effect the end of last year. It throws out all our experiences in a way, or skews it, or so we basically have.
But
to
you're building for growth anyway.
It's really. Whatever happens, and you have to take it and take it in your stride and deal with it.
We have a question where we ask about work-life balance. Now, I'm a bit sensitive about asking that to a psychologist.
Well, personally, I emphasize that, and I use that in my sessions with clients, especially in coaching sessions, that I let slip that I do my regular exercise and that I take time out, because I think you really have to do what you preach, because otherwise it's ingenuine, and clients will notice that over time. So it's not just, and this is the beauty for me of this profession, that you can pass on what you experience yourself. You're not just teaching from a book, and this is why I'm looking forward to the mature age, where you can draw on your own experiences rather than.
Well, neither you nor I are there yet, but when we get there, it will be enjoyable.
Eventually, in a few years,
Indeed.
a few
Indeed.
decades.
We also give our interviewees an opportunity to have a bit of a rant, when it comes to business. Is there something that you would love to see fixed, other than perhaps the Medicare going back to 18 sessions?
From a business point of view, I can't really, I don't really have too many issues, that would pertain to a particular organisation that I would say they could be doing more, or should be doing more. Although there are no shoulds, as you may be aware. You either do it or you don't, or you want to do it. So I can't really pick any particular area that would irk me on a consistent basis, in the business area anyway. I think in our profession it's really up to you what you...
At a community level, would you like to see something change here on the coast?
Something that I or we endeavoured to do was, after the launch of the book, that we wanted to have a community forum on our young children and to catch them before they become young offenders. Because I think and you heard it takes a community to raise a child. And so we plan to have this one-day session with diverse organisations like the Salvos, St Vincent de Paul, the council, and anybody who's got an interest in it, the clubs, who can offer something, and then of course the community, where they can say, well, this is what we're willing to do, or this is our problem, what can we do to fix it? So to get the groundswell movement from the community, that they might set up meetings or initiatives within their street even. And unfortunately that hasn't happened. Why? I guess time is one factor.
We're all busy, but that is your book, titled Creating Juvenile Delinquents Without Working at It, or
without even trying.
Without
yes.
even trying. Sorry, I should get that. Without even trying. It tells everyone we need to work on it. We need to find time, because that's how we create juvenile delinquents, I would think, by not having time for them.
That is one factor, and but the reason why I think the community has to do something is because these young delinquents become adults, and it's not just somebody else's problem, because delinquents are around you as juveniles or as adults, and if we don't want to surrender to a change in our values, then of course we got to do something. We got to give them an alternative. We got to show them that it's worth changing and what it's worth changing for. And if the community can't convince them, then we have to ask ourselves, what are our values? Maybe they're not that valuable.
If we don't value them,
that's it.
Dr. John Irvine sat in this chair probably a couple of weeks ago, months ago, and raised that same thing. We need to get back to community values. George, if we look at the more mature or the maturing opportunities for growth and development, and men's sheds have evolved into that space, giving blokes a place to go. Are organisations like that open to discussion and nurturing of juveniles?
I have to admit that I only know what I know about the men's sheds is what people told me. I don't know about their philosophy, so I'm making this up at the moment. My understanding is that the men's sheds were really for men to exchange their experiences, not to feel useless, to experience that other people or other men go through emotions, that it's okay to cry, that kind of thing. And the idea to now extend it as mentors for young people, I think is great, but it's not something that I would expect to naturally evolve out of the idea of a men's shed, because it was for men to talk about themselves. My personal experiences with adults who wanted to help young people was within a church community, where they said, okay, we're running these youth groups, who was interested to help us, and there were probably 10 adults, 12 adults, and they all fell away over time because they were just not able to accept the attitudes that they were confronted with by young people. They expected discipline, they expected to be not just listened to, but to be followed, and that their advice was heeded and not just taken notice of, or being noted. And so they certainly had the right, and they had in the right place and the right intentions, but they were overwhelmed by the demand that the young people don't see themselves as people who need help or advice. Yeah, if I need advice, I'll come and ask you, and then that doesn't mean I'm going to do it. And if you can't accept that attitude, then of course you get very frustrated as a mature-aged person.
Because we forget we were just like that.
I couldn't have said it better myself. If you want to work with young people, that's what you do. You work with them. You don't try to pull them over, work against them. You look at what have they got, what are their strengths, and where they're falling over, or what are they saying they want to achieve, and then get in their own way. And that's a source of frustration, and they know that. If you offer a way out of that, then they listen to you. But if you say, no, you're on the wrong way altogether, I mean, who wants to hear that?
If business inside, because a strong community builds strong businesses. Yeah. If we can do something there, George, we need to push it ahead. Thank you for your time.
My pleasure.
Okay.